Would you like to get your child's health on track before the end of the year? If so, I have a special offer for you, our beautiful podcast listeners, with 15% off initial consultations with our highly experienced and knowledgeable team of naturopaths and nutritionists. All of our consultations are done online, so it's really nice and convenient for you at this busy time of the year. We can help your kids with things like eczema, allergies, infections, immunity, food intolerances, digestive symptoms, fussy eating and nutritional deficiencies, enlarged tonsils and adenoids, supporting ADHD and autistic children, anxiety, behavioural challenges, the transition through puberty, and so much more. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, click on Work With Us, and then book an appointment and use the code NOVEMBER, all in capitals, to claim your 15% off initial consultations. These appointments must be booked in before the end of November, but you can book them into December and January. We can also support mums with things like fatigue, hormones, perimenopause, energy, thyroid health, stress, postnatal nutrition, digestive issues, and so much more. So head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, click on Work With Us, then book an appointment. We can't wait to support you, and don't forget to use that code NOVEMBER. Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast. So today we're talking about 3 key nutrients we see deficiencies in and what parents can look for and how we can correct them. And I have brought our nutritionist Adelle on to chat about these things, as well as so that our listeners can get to know Adelle a bit more. So welcome, Adelle.
Thanks, Jess.
So good to have you here. We have recorded a podcast together once already, so this isn't your first time on the podcast. We chatted about our membership community and how we support members in the Natural Super Kids Club. But today I really want to celebrate that you are now on the books in our calendar as a practitioner that people can book in with for online consultations. So that's very exciting and that's very new. So we wanted to bring you on to so you can talk a bit more about yourself and your interests in a professional sort of way, and then talk about these 3 nutrients. So do you want to start by telling everyone a little bit about yourself? I know that's such a broad question.
Yeah, it is, especially like the older you get as well. It's a lot of history.
Yes.
So I am living on beautiful Cubby country, so in the Sunshine Coast in a little hinterland town here. I originally grew up in central Queensland in a town called Biloela. So I was super excited to get this gig because it means that I can support people far and wide. My first client was actually from the UK, so it was so strange speaking to her and seeing this bustling office in the middle of London. So that was amazing. I moved to Brisbane when I graduated from high school, and I studied nutrition at Endeavour College of Natural Medicine. Few things happened in between there, and before I started practicing properly, I guess I had 2 babies. So I've got 2 beautiful children. I'm in the thick of motherhood at the moment. They're quite young. So at a different, I guess, space to you, Jess.
Yeah.
But I really love supporting families and I guess making health and nutrition accessible for all families and working with them with what works best for them.
Yes, I love that. And I love that you mentioned like your first client was in the UK, but you're from this sort of really remote sort of place in Australia, because that's what I love about what we can offer at Natural Super Kids. Like we get people booking in for consultations from all sorts of different places. And I know, the rural and remote communities are big sort of like in our audience, in our customer base, in our membership, because they do struggle to get, face-to-face support. And so I love that you mentioned that you've got that real life experience of living like that, because I think that makes you so much more well versed in supporting mums that live in those communities.
Yeah, it can be really isolating. I remember, driving to Rockhampton even for a dentist appointment, and that's, 2 and a bit hours away. And even in Biloela, there was a period of time where people couldn't birth in Biloela and they had to drive all that way. Imagine doing that in labor, to birth at Rockhampton. So, yeah, I have, I guess, a real amount of empathy for those women and families. Obviously, incredibly beautiful places to live as
Mm,
well. So, I guess that's a bit of the trade-off, but you don't have access to the health services out there like you do in places where I live now.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And some of the people in those communities have, like things like specific things that we need to consider. They might be living on farms, there might be sprays that, we've got to look at the sort of water they're drinking. And so, yeah, I guess we want to make it clear that we are here to support families in rural and remote communities in Australia and around the world as well.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
all the way from, like you said, with your first client who's in bustling London. So
Yeah.
that's so such a contrast, isn't it? And it really is our privilege to be able to support these parents all over the place. So what about, as a nutritionist, and obviously you're a mum, so as you said, you're in the thick of motherhood at a very different stage than I am. And it's funny because we often, we'll catch up about what's been happening on the weekend or whatever, and our lives definitely look very different now that I'm in the later teenage years and you're in the young kid years. Um, but yeah, tell me a bit more about your, I guess, passions and interests as a nutritionist and the specific sort of, I guess, areas that you love to support parents and kids in.
Yeah, I really love those chats that we have actually, just because it makes me excited for the teenage years as well. I feel like it has me mourning a bit less. Look at my kids and I'm like, oh, why are they growing up so fast? But knowing that that next stage is also really exciting at that, and that they just need as much support, just in different ways. So that's a bit of a side note. So as a nutritionist, I really love supporting families, and meeting them where they are. So I think in my profession, or in our profession, there's a lot of really complicated information out there and overwhelming information. And so I like to be, I guess, a very reasonable practitioner, not taking away any crutches per se that people might be using, and just, I guess, scaffolding and supporting them, meeting them where they're at. Navigating food sensitivities is one of my favorite things to do, because it can be a very overwhelming time for a family if they've got a child that's been diagnosed with something like that. So giving them lots of options and swapping suggestions there so that they feel empowered to nourish and feed their family. I'm doing a bit of extra learning at the moment around gut microbiome testing and hair mineral testing as well. So I dive into the hair mineral testing tonight in, I guess, a little bit more depth than what I learnt at uni. So I'm really excited to see where that learning takes me to as another tool to do some, non-invasive testing with families, as well, as I know that that can be something that can be a little bit overwhelming. And then I think, kids aside, I really love supporting women, and I love supporting women in the prenatal and postnatal stage, because I think, when mum is well nourished and well looked after and knows what to do to support her health, that can make all the world of difference in how, I guess, she supports the family as well. So that's another really big interest area for me too.
Yeah, so important. Like, and we're constantly talking about how, if mums, as mums, we often prioritize our kids' health, right?
Yeah.
But if we are depleted and tired and we're not sleeping well and our hormones are all over the place, and then we're not going to be very well equipped to be able to look after the rest of the family. So I love that you've mentioned that. And I think some people don't realize that we do support mums and
Mm.
even the occasional dad. But yeah, we're very well versed in women's health. And so, mums are always more than welcome to book an appointment in our online clinic as well. And we often get mums booking in. They'll book their kids in, won't they? And then they'll book themselves in
Yeah.
later.
Yes. Yeah.
And you've got a client like that at the moment, haven't you?
Yeah, that was really lovely, actually. I'm very excited to be able to support her as well. We've built a beautiful rapport. So, you know, it's an honor to be able to support her and her little one.
Yeah. And then when you've already got that information about the kids' health, you've got a lot more context going into supporting the mum as well, haven't you?
Yeah, you kind of have this idea already of what they're doing as a family.
Yes.
So that's nice.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So let's dive into these three key nutrients that we often see in terms of, in low levels or deficiency in kids. So, first of all, share the three nutrients with us and then we'll go into them one by one.
So I mean, it was hard to pick because, modern diets are often lacking in a lot of ways, but I have chosen iron, vitamin D, and iodine.
And I think these are such good nutrients to dive into. Iron, we've talked about quite a bit on the podcast before, but there's good reason for that because we see a lot of iron deficiency in kids and mums. So talk to us about iron. Let's start with why is it important? When it comes to our kids' health, what sort of role does it have?
So iron's needed for producing hemoglobin, so that carries the oxygen in the blood. So it's really crucial for energy levels. And when we've got low energy, we're not able to focus on our learning as much. Our bodies also aren't able to fight off viruses as well. So it is one of those ones where there's a bit of a cascade of events that occur after it if it is low.
Yes, and that's actually such a good point because we often think of well, my child's iron deficient, or we think they might be iron deficient, but they're still, they still might be hyperactive and have lots of energy. But that sort of low iron can present, like you said, in things like frequent infections or irritability. It
Mm,
doesn't always mean that they're going to be sitting on the couch with no energy.
no, that's right. Yeah,
Mm.
it's all about looking at the big picture.
Yes, exactly. And like you said, I mean, that role that iron has in blood cell production, red blood cell production, and transporting oxygen around the body, it's so important in so many different areas of health. So, um, tell us more about iron, like the signs and symptoms that parents can look for in terms of their child potentially being iron deficient.
So we touched on a moment ago, I guess, that irritability and low energy. Your child might also look like they've got, pale skin, the increased infections, but not only the increased infections, that inability to shake them off quickly. So things might linger and it might feel like one cold just rolls into another, or you're not sure whether they even got over it in the first place. Decreased focus, so that inability to focus at school, and decreased appetite. So, you might be trying to increase all of these iron-rich foods into your little one, but if they're already low in iron, they might not be wanting to eat much at all. Or they could be wanting to eat some really odd things, it's got a special name for it. It's called pica or picker. So it is things like chewing on plain ice or wanting to eat chalk or dirt. It's really odd. And that also can happen to people during pregnancy as well.
Yeah, so pregnant people, like pregnant women, might think, oh, it's just a weird craving, when really
Mm.
it's a sign that they're iron deficient, which really is something that needs to be addressed in pregnancy.
Yes, yeah. And by not addressing an iron deficiency appropriately in pregnancy too, that can be setting your little one up for, starting life being iron deficient as well. So they're already starting, I guess, on that back foot.
Yes, that's so true. And that's really, I think, something worthwhile thinking about for all women who know they were iron deficient through pregnancy, really making sure that you're being proactive about your baby's, iron levels. And that can look different, for different ages and that sort of thing. But I remember a case in my early years of practicing where there was a mum that was extremely iron deficient and her little one was born very iron deficient. And it was, I think by the time I was seeing this little girl, she was like 2.5 and she'd had iron deficiency, like severe iron deficiency her whole life. And it can be really hard to kind of bring iron levels back up from that. So yeah, I love that you made that point.
Yeah, definitely.
And just on the fatigue, so as I sort of alluded to earlier, it doesn't mean that your kids are going to be sitting around with no energy at all. Like, I think one of the telltale signs of iron deficiency or low iron is that kids that just tire easily, like they can't keep up with the other kids, because, that oxygenation isn't happening in their body because of that iron deficiency. So they might not be tired all the time, but they don't have a lot of sort of stamina to kind of keep going. I think that's something that I see often.
Yeah, and also the way in which they act when they're tired. So,
Yeah.
you mentioned before that like that hyperactivity, they're bouncing off the walls. That can also be a sign of iron deficiency because that is how they're processing that feeling of fatigue. I know when my little boy is very tired, for example, he finds it so hard to wind down
Yeah.
and it gets sillier and sillier the later it gets. So
Exactly. So it's not
that can also
always,
happen.
yeah, it's not
Yeah.
always really straightforward, just like, oh no, they've got heaps of energy. They're always hyperactive. That can still be, iron deficiency. So let's talk about food sources and what parents can do to ensure their kids are getting enough iron in their diet. Yeah, and anything else you might suggest.
Yeah, so there are two forms of iron. So you got all two, yeah, main sources. So you're going to have your heme and your non-heme sources. So when we talk about heme sources, we're speaking about animal sources, and when we're talking about non-heme, we're speaking about plant sources. So I do respect that there is a wide variety of eating preferences. I'm not saying you have to go and eat animal sources if you're vegan or vegetarian. It's just something that you need to be very aware of, that it's not going to be as accessible within your diet as someone that is consuming a carnivore, not a carnivore diet, but a meat-based diet.
Yeah.
So red meat is going to be wonderful source of iron. You could do, like slow cooker dishes. Lamb is one of my favorite red meat sources. Um, Fish is a great one too. And eggs. Moving over to your non-heme sources, so your leafy greens, you might want to add some steamed spinach to a smoothie. You can pre-steam things and pop them in the freezer because it does contain, as a raw ingredient, it does contain components within that plant that inhibits the absorption of iron. So that's when it gets even more complicated. So ensuring that there's a mix of raw and cooked foods within the diet is really important there as well. So your green leafies are a great one, but making sure you're getting the mix of cooked and non-cooked. Legumes, different nuts and seeds as well. I really love little pepitas. They're a bit of a nutrient powerhouse. So getting those in the diet where possible too. Did I just mention legumes? I think I did. So nuts, legumes as in like chickpeas, white beans, black beans. And you can do all kinds of amazing things with them. We're not just talking about you need to sit down to a bean salad. We've come a bit further than that now. Our recipe base on our club platform is testament to that. Things like black bean brownies can be really great, and a good way to get it into. So yeah, just
Yes.
thinking outside the square.
Yes, definitely. And dips can be a really good way to get legumes in as well. But I love that you sort of differentiated because really, I know we are talking, there may be vegetarians and vegans listening, but the non-heme plant-based sources of iron really don't compare to the, meat-based sources. So if you are vegetarian, vegan, or your child is, supplementation may be necessary to really be getting enough iron in.
Yes, I agree.
And the other thing I want to talk about before we move on, because we could spend an hour talking about iron,
Yeah.
is that absorption in the gut is really important as well. So even kids that are getting enough iron in their diet sometimes become deficient because there's inflammation or other things going on within the gut that affect iron absorption. And we've done other episodes on that. So I'll make sure they're linked in the show notes for anyone interested in doing a deeper dive into iron. But I think that covers most things. Was there anything else you wanted to say, or should we move on to vitamin D?
Let's head on over to vitamin D, I think.
All right. Tell us more about vitamin D and what it does in the body and why it's so important for kids.
So vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. It's really important for bone development, teeth development, immune function. Again, it's one of those ones where everything kind of cascades into one another. It is another one that has some funny symptoms if you're deficient in it. And I understand that different parts of our country or even, across the world are going to be at higher risk of this. We do need to be really sun safe. I'm on the Sunshine Coast and I'm ashamed to admit I did get very burnt on the weekend on my back where I have had a melanoma in situ removed in the past. So naughty me. But, when we are practicing sun safe practices, we are then moving into this risk of being vitamin D deficient. And then if you're in areas where, like Victoria, where it gets quite cold, you might be seeing a lot less sun too. So it is something to be very considerate of and to be making sure we're getting the foods in there and supplementing if we need. But vitamin D can present as a sore lower back, which is a really interesting one. So if your little one's ever, complaining about a sore lower back or even just generalized muscular aches and pains, that should tweak that, hey, maybe we could be low here. Delayed teeth eruption is another one. So, of course, there's a varied span of normal with teeth eruption, but that's one to monitor as well. I think, bone development, having bandy kind of legs is one that's, I would say, less common in Australia, but it is, again, something to be aware of. If you notice anything, go and get it checked.
Yeah, and I've also noticed like kids with low muscle tone can be
Yeah.
more sort of pro,
Yeah.
or they tend to have more vitamin D deficiency. And yeah, those general aches and pains is a really good one because vitamin D deficiency is pretty hard to spot, to be honest. Like it's you're not going to go, oh, they must be vitamin D deficient. But I think you've listed some really important things to look out for there. But things like growing pains or even restless legs, if our kids are experiencing those sorts of things, getting vitamin D checked is a good idea. And yeah, the only way to know for sure with vitamin D is to get a blood test. But the good news is that it is pretty easy to test, isn't it? Like just through a regular blood test.
Yeah, and I think it would be one of those ones that, I mean, I'm just speaking very generally here. I'm sure there are some doctors that do just, go and do the testing if indicated, but it is one of the ones you probably have to ask for a little bit
I
more. So
agree.
that's the
Yeah,
beauty of working with a naturopath or nutritionist. We are integrative care, so we're not your primary care provider. We work in with your, general practitioner, so we can always write them a letter saying, hey, these are our thoughts. What do you think about testing XYZ to save you having to, ask things as well. So
yeah, it can be really tricky, actually. I recently took my daughter to get some blood tests. She's 15, her first blood test ever, because she hasn't really had the need to before. But I had to push for vitamin D, saying that she's a teenager. She probably doesn't spend enough time outside. She's tired quite often. To be honest, I had to sort of
ham it up a
exaggerate
bit.
some. Yeah, just to try and get the vitamin D. And lo and behold, she is low in vitamin D. So I'm really
Yeah.
glad. It was the very end of winter that we got tested, but I feel like we had a really cold, long winter here, and it was hard to get her outside. So yes, I know from experience that it can be really hard to get that vitamin D like test sort of referred by the GP.
Yeah, and then looking at optimal ranges too, because if you're on the lower end of
Exactly.
normal, a lot of GPs, I guess within reason, are going to say like you're within normal ranges, and that's not the truth. Like that is the truth, But as functional practitioners, we, have I guess, our own understanding that having it that little bit higher can have extra benefits.
Totally. Yeah. And that was our experience as well. The doctor was like, oh, her vitamin D's okay. I said, can you tell me what it is exactly, please? And it was low in my eyes, but the GP said it was fine. So you always want to, it's always a good idea to get second opinions on test results from, integrative health practitioners like us, and also ask for a copy of the results. I always like to do that.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing, Jess. Ask for a copy because I know a lot of the times people will come to us and they'll be like, oh, we had those done recently. I'm like, well, can we see?
Yeah,
Because,
exactly. We want to see what the levels are, not
yeah,
just that the doctor said that they were fine.
yeah, always get a copy. It'll serve you well to do so.
Definitely. Okay, so let's talk about how we can get more vitamin D into our kids.
Obviously, still practicing our sun safety, that's really important, but a bit of morning sun is very beneficial. And then I like to focus on the fatty foods. So things like dairy, if you're not intolerant to dairy, is beneficial, as well as an oily fish. So cod liver, and no, it's not like the cod liver like we used to get as kids, where it literally was rancid, so it tasted as such. Um, a good quality cod liver oil is a beautiful natural source of it as well.
Yes, yes, good tip. And the sun safety is definitely a balance. My outlook on sun safety may be a little bit different to yours. I mean, you're in Queensland, I'm in South Australia,
Yeah.
so it's really tricky, and empowering kids to make good decisions with sun as well. Now that I've got older kids, our rule is if the UV index is over 3, then you need to definitely focus on sun safety. But if it's under 3, then you probably don't need sunscreen. But it does vary a bit where you live.
Yeah, I was going to say mine's never under that. I have it at
Yes.
9:30 in the morning and I've actually got quite olive skin. So isn't it funny that how different, you know,
I know
you
where
are?
you live. And then I've got the opposite problem at the moment now. My daughter, 15-year-old daughter, thinks it's great to tan, to lay out in the sun, and she watches the UV index and like celebrates when it's going to be really high so her and her friends can tan, which
Oh,
oh anyway,
yeah.
that's a whole nother
Maybe we
tangent.
need to do a podcast on skin for teens.
Yes, I know. I need to get an expert in to help me navigate that.
Yeah.
Because even though I've had quite a few skin cancers cut out, like just BCCs, so not melanomas like you were talking about. So yeah, it's a really tricky balance, I guess, is what we're saying, to get that vitamin D level, adequate, and also practice sun safety.
100%. Yeah.
And that's where those nutritional, like fatty food sources that you talked about are great.
Well, I have one more, and it's a really fun one. Of course, I'm like excited about food, but if you sunbake your mushrooms, so I'm not kidding, pop your mushrooms on the kitchen bench where they're going to get a bit of sunlight exposure if you're going to cook them in the evening, that increases their vitamin D content. So they already do contain vitamin D, but sunbaking them, they're safe to sunbake. That's okay. That
Yes.
increases their vitamin D.
I love it. Yes, that's such a good little tip. And it's all about those little things we can do to optimize the nutritional content of the food that we're feeding our kids, because it's not always easy to get the food in. So if we can get more nutrients into the food that we're getting in, then that's always a win.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. So vitamin D, and let's move on to iodine.
Yes. So iodine, very common for us to be deficient here in Australia. It's just not in our soil. So it's a pretty common one. And I think it's one that isn't tested appropriately a lot of the time, particularly for women. I mean, I don't believe many people would even test their kids, but it is something to be aware of. But when we look at thyroid function, there are a variety of tests that we can do. Generally, TSH is the only thing that's done, and that doesn't really tell us a whole heap. So looking at a range of hormones and even urinary iodine is really important to get the whole picture. When we're low in iodine, it impacts our thyroid. So it can impact our energy production, our energy levels, can lead to poor concentration, fatigue. You might even get like a swelling around your neck area, and that's otherwise known as a goiter. Yeah, so it's a lot of these overlap, as you can see. So I guess differentially, not that we diagnose people, but looking at what deficiencies there could be present, we that's why we do a big write-up, I guess. We look at what the diet's like, where they live, what their activity levels are like, and then that will lead us in one direction versus another.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's so true. Like, fatigue could be a symptom of iron deficiency. It could be a symptom of vitamin D deficiency, or it could be a symptom of iodine deficiency.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's the benefit of working with a practitioner, because we can tease it apart much more than, the average person, but also we can refer for testing if and when necessary as well. So yeah, so iodine, equals thyroid basically. If iodine levels are low, then the thyroid is not going to be functioning well. And the other thing I like to think about with when it comes to iodine is like cognitive function and learning in kids. So yeah, do you want to talk to us about some of the other signs and symptoms that parents might notice when it comes to low iodine in their kids?
Yeah, so that mood and behavior kind of thing as well. So there's something called the OAT axis. Now this is, I guess, only relevant to those with ovaries. So that's ovarian, adrenal, and thyroid. So that's, you know, all about mood and overall energy levels. Our little adrenals are to do with how we respond to stress. Um, and, if you've got a teenage daughter and her periods all over the place, that could also be an indicator that perhaps there's something going on with her thyroid as well. Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
some
good.
big ones.
And again, like not really black and white to kind of
No, it's
figure
not.
out, but yeah, I think looking out for those sort of signs and symptoms. And yeah, anything brain related, learning,
Yeah.
concentration, like any times children might be having learning issues. Of course, it can be a whole range of things, but we would be thinking about iodine and are they getting enough iodine in their diet?
Yes, 100%. And it's also one of those ones that if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, that sounds like my child, it is definitely not one that you would jump in and just supplement with.
Yes.
Testing's really important because it is, I guess, a trace nutrient. You can do a lot of damage by just supplementing when you don't need it.
Totally. Yes. I'm so glad that you said that. So, talk to us. I know you just said, soils are deficient, so it can be really hard to get enough iodine, but how can parents sort of increase the amount of iodine or ensure that their kids are getting some good iodine rich sources of food in their diet?
Yeah. So I like seafood is a really, really great one, but I do acknowledge that not everyone A has access to it or B can have it due to allergies or sensitivities. But seafood is one of those ones. So, use it as an excuse to have it once or twice a week if you can, if it's available to you. I know that people shy away from it sometimes because they think their child won't like it, but there are many different ways to incorporate it into their diet and make it enjoyable to eat. Your sea vegetables are really wonderful ones to get. So nori, kelp noodles are lovely. You can use those in place of rice noodles in salads. They're beautiful, crunchy texture. Dairy comes in there again. So a dairy is another good to try and get in the diet if you can. And our wonderful nutrient powerhouse food that, again, I acknowledge some are sensitive to it, but eggs. Eggs are just incredible. So get
So
those
many
in there if you
nutrients.
can, and you can have them every day.
Yeah. Awesome. And so like you're saying, the fish and the sea vegetables, so things that come out of the sea are generally, good sources of iodine. And you can buy like dried seaweed that you can just sprinkle over different, meals that you're making, pretty easily as well. So yeah, and I love the reminder of kelp noodles. We haven't had those for a while, but yeah, they're really good. Like they're a really lovely texture, like you said.
Yeah, they are. And they can go in soups or salads. So hot or cold is fine with the kelp noodles. But yeah, I even just get the nori sheets and chop them up into fine little shredded bits. And I add it to, I'll do tuna rice balls for my kids. And that also contains egg and cheese and the nori as well. And it gets rolled into a little ball shape. It's like their favorite thing. It's like sushi in a ball. But yeah, so that's, you can get it in, you can be really crafty with how you get things in.
Yes. And another little tip there, we like to do sushi bowls. Again, we haven't done these for a while, but to make sushi at home can be a bit time consuming. Hey,
Oh,
you have to
yeah.
roll it up but if you can just throw all those ingredients into a bowl, bit of rice, bit of fish, bit of seaweed, some salad, really easy to throw together. And kids that like sushi will generally like a dish like that. Good summer dinner.
Yeah, amazing. And they have that autonomy over what they pop in their bowl too, which is one of my favorite tips to give to families of fussy eaters. If you have all of your salad stuff chopped and prepared and popped in front of you, you can say, can you pick something green to put in your bowl? Can you pick something red to put in your bowl? So turn it into a bit of a game.
Yes, I love that tip. And then there can be the seaweed can be an addition there to any
Yeah.
salad, really.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Okay, beautiful. So we've covered those three nutrients, iron, vitamin D, and iodine. So thank you. Is there anything you want to, I guess, say to finish up or share with parents? One, I don't know, quick tip to get more nutrients into kids? I'm throwing this out there, putting you on the spot.
You are my favorite thing at the moment. I really love adding bone broth to my cooking. So I use the slow cooker a lot. So even in summer, when it's 40 degrees in the hinterland here, I will still use my slow cooker. And if I'm doing a pulled meat or something or a spaghetti bolognese, that'll go in. And I definitely always add a couple of tablespoons of a bone broth powder. You can get powders, pastes, you name it. But a good quality bone broth really is a great thing to have on hand.
Yes. So good. So many nutrients in there as well. Thank you, Adelle. So you can find more information about Adelle on our bookings page. You can go to our website and go work with me, book an appointment, and you'll see all the write-up about Adelle, and you can book an appointment with her there. We'll make sure that the link is in the show notes. So Adelle just has limited availability at the moment for bookings. But hopefully this has helped you learn a bit more about Adelle, but also learn something about these key nutrients. So thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Jess. Can I also add in there as well, being that I am a nutritionist, if you have private health funds, it's and you're thinking you might like to book a consult with me, it's well worth giving them a call and asking about your extras cover, as I do have claiming capability as well. So
Yes,
yeah.
thank you so much for mentioning that, because that can, I think all families are looking at where they can save bits of money here and there. And so that's, really important. And if you've got any questions about that, you can email us, jessica@naturalsuperkids.com, and we can help you out. Thanks so much, everyone. Enjoy your day. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.